So this was in my recent haul from the fragrances that I got from fragrancebuy.ca. I immediately started spending time with it that night, wore it again 2 nights later, again the following night. I've given it several wearings at this point, and I'm pretty eager and excited to give you my thoughts on the newest release in the Boss Bottled line, Boss Bottled Eau de Parfum. Stay tuned. So naturally we're going to start off with the presentation. I do have the box right here. It has a slight gold hue, but standard Boss Bottled, fair size and concentration, name of the fragrance, nothing on the sides, Boss Hugo Boss on the top, batch code stamped in the bottom, and on the back they actually do have the note breakdown. So if you check Fragrantica, it's a different note breakdown from this. So I go off of this official note breakdown from the company itself, and I'll have those on screen for you guys, or actually we'll discuss it right now. So you have on the top bergamot and apple accord, in the heart cardamom and sage, highlighting sage right here. Remember sage. Base notes of olive wood accord and vetiver, but standard fare for their Boss Bottled line. Now with the bottle, I really dig the color combination here. There's a dark gray juice with that slightly gold indice on the Hugo Boss. Embossed Boss in the glass like usual. This is new, embossing the Boss logo on top. None of my other Boss Bottled fragrances have that, with that brushed slightly gold hue like the lettering and the box. Do have batch code fragrance information on the bottom. The atomizer is a matte finish, but same color, just not brushed. It's a matte finish with their standard atomizer. Let's get into this scent. So for those of you that didn't see my first impressions, I was a little disappointed when I first sprayed this one, because immediately I'm met with a heavy dose of sage. And those of you that don't know what the significance of a heavy dose of sage means, that's usually the bubblegummy type of smell. Sage does have that bubblegummy Invictus-y type of scent to it. And I was kind of disappointed. I wasn't expecting a bubblegummy blue type of fragrance. And I love blue fragrances. I love Invictus style fragrances. It's just not what I wanted this to be. So for those of you that saw my first impressions, you saw the disappointment. Those of you that didn't, I'm letting you know right now, I was disappointed in my first impressions. That's what intrigued me to immediately start spending time with this fragrance, really get to the bottom of what Boss Bottled EDP is all about. In the opening, you get a lot of that apple accord, plenty of cardamom, and sage. It's a sage bomb up top on my skin to my nose. I don't know how many others are getting that, but that's what I get from it. And you know, the bubblegum aspect, the sage does start to fade, and the cardamom and apple become more and more prominent. It starts to get spicier and spicier and spicier. It really starts to shine after about 10 to 15 minutes for me. In the opening, it's kind of like, they made a blue Boss Bottled. That's what I immediately thought in that first impressions, because it was the first 15 minutes of the life of the fragrance. And then that night, I sprayed it out the shower and so on and so forth. I've been wearing it the last several days, actually. You just haven't been seeing but one post. Follow me on Instagram. You saw that first post for the first night. But it gets better. It does. It gets a lot better. It grew on me more and more as time passed, more and more with each spray. I feel like this is one that needs time and attention to really be able to appreciate what they were trying to do. What it is they took Boss Bottle and they tried to modernize it. That's my takeaway from it, is they wanted to fit into the trend. The trend is Eau de Parfum flankers, and it's also sage-dominated, blue-styled fragrances. That's a trend that's been going with designers for a little while, and of course they had to throw their hat in the ring for their Eau de Parfum flanker and also their blue version of their namesake, Boss Bottled Boss No. 6, the original from this line, which this is a flanker. And like I said, it gets spicier as time goes on. The olive wood accord, that olive tree that they've been using more and more over the last 2 years, Does come out a little bit, but I find the cardamom hangs out the whole time. The apple stays for quite a while. I never really get much bergamot. There's a little juiciness up top, but it doesn't really jump out at me as bergamot. It's mostly apple, cardamom, and sage most of the life until the apple starts to fade and that olive wood accord and a little bit of grassiness from the vetiver does come in. It adds a little touch, a little tinge of freshness. It's not a dirty, earthy vetiver. It's a very, very light, grassy vetiver that I get from this one. It's one of those fragrances that, like I said, if you have a lot of blue bubblegummy fragrances, this one might disappoint you at the fragrance counter at a department store, because if you only spend 5 minutes with it on a test strip or spray it on your hand and then you wash it off 10 minutes later, you're not getting the whole story of what Boss Bottled EDP is about. And on my first impressions video, it wasn't the whole story, and I knew it wasn't the whole story. That's why I had to start spending time with it immediately. That's why it's the first one to get an in-depth review. Performance on it, I'm not going to say it surprised me, but it's average, slightly above average. I would say most people are going to get 6 to 8 hours. It was more in that 8 to 9 hour range for me in longevity. I was kind of taken back. I'm not used to Boss Bottled fragrances outside of intense Eau de Parfum giving me that type of longevity, and the projection was slightly above average as well. I would say in that first 2 hours, it was going beyond arm's length, and I had a really good scent trail going. Very, very easy for people to smell me. I actually did get 2 compliments since I started wearing it, not counting my wife, because my wife loves the bubblegummy type stuff. Of course, she likes how this smells. But really when that spice starts coming in is when this thing, man, it starts to shine. I was disappointed. At first, I thought it was going to be a disappointing release, but now after spending some time with it, I do think it's a well-fitting release into the line. It's something that they didn't have, where it doesn't take the place of intense Eau de Parfum. By no means does it accomplish that, and I don't think they were going for that now that I've spent time with it. But it does give you a more modern take on the original, where the original was all about sharp apple cinnamon, apple pie, woods, you know, very sharp. Love wearing that one with a suit. Doesn't perform like it used to, but I still think it's a great fragrance. The Intense, much more warm apple pie than it was sharpness, and more gourmandy and sensual, more geared towards the evening, where this falls somewhere in between that, not right in the middle, but it's got the warmth and the spice and some of the performance from the Intense EDP, while maintaining a lot of the DNA, but not quite smelling of that apple pie that the line's known for, the original and the Intense. This kind of does its own thing, while still having a little bit of that original DNA. It still has the spice, it still has the apple and a little bit of touch of vetiver, but it's not overly woody. That olive wood accord adds a little bit to it with the kind of an olive richness to it. If you've smelled the other olive tree notes in their fragrances, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's mostly this beautiful sweet spice and that bubblegummy sage. That's why I say it falls somewhere in between, but it doesn't really lean to one side or the other. It has aspects of both while still maintaining its own thing. Solid release, and I'm actually quite happy to have this one. Again, that's Boss Bottled Eau de Parfum. So I know that was a little all over the place. I had a lot to say about this fragrance because, like I said, it disappointed me upon first sniff. It didn't smell bad, it just was not what I was hoping it would be. But as I spent time with it, it definitely won me over. And it's definitely one that I urge you to sample first. It's blind buy safe if you don't have a bunch from the line. It's blind buy safe if you don't have a bunch of sage heavy fragrances. It's definitely blind buy safe if you don't have a lot of that. But if you do have a lot of stuff like that, you might want to sample this one first, because there's some redundancy here if you have a lot of fragrances of that style. And until next time, do me a real quick favor, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, because I do appreciate all the feedback and I love hearing from you guys. I mean, if you've tried this already, it's actually a very good release. I could see how some people would be underwhelmed by it. I was at first. But it's definitely one you got to spend some time with. I urge you, get a sample, get a decant, go spray it all over yourself at a fragrance counter so you can get a full wearing out of it. Walk by some people, spend some time with this fragrance. I truly believe this one needs your attention so you can really learn it and understand it and see if it's for you. And until next time, I will say, if you get your hands on Boss Bottled EDP and you give it a spray now, I don't know, You might end up thanking me later. Have a good one, guys.